Hi. Today we're going to be doing an exercise called found poetry, which is also called blackout poetry, and it's different from other poetry writing exercises because instead of adding words, you're subtracting them. So what you need is a page of text. What I've done is photocopy spreads from three classic works of literature, all three of which are often studied in the high school canon, the high school canonical high school curriculum. The Catcher in the Rye by J.D. Salinger, Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe, and 1984 by George Orwell. So what I've done is photocopy a spread from each work. So the idea behind found poetry or blackout poetry is you are eliminating words you don't want to allow the poem to emerge from the page. So just like with poetry that you create, in other ways and with other writing processes, you're free to use little segments of prose, of like grammatical arrangements. You're also free to, punctuate with random words and sort of imagine your own line breaks and create whatever rhythm you like. But I think as you go through the process, especially for the first time, you'll feel your way around that. So here's what you do. What you need really is some form of text, and if you don't have a scanner or a printer, copier, you can ask if you have an old book that you don't want anymore, or just find some sort of page of text and make sure you can manipulate it in that way. But what I've done is just photocopy a couple of these. So what you'll do is you need that. You need, really all you need is a pencil or a black marker or something like that. So my daughter and I here, we're going to be working with, we've got some pencils, some black markers, we've got some colored markers, we've got some fine liners and some pencil crayons, and we'll just use whatever we feel like using. But also, in the past, one day we were painting and got some, generic canvases, and we were doing some painting activities, and then what I decided to do was turn that into the backdrop for a found poem. So I did this, and what I did was actually, it's a little bit different though, because I took a poem.
And you cut things out instead of.
Exactly. I cut them out instead of blacking them out. So that's exactly right. And the other thing that I did that's different between this and found poetry is, in this, I used every single word that appeared in the original poem. So what I did was actually rearrange every single word in the poem to make it make sense on its own. And I was actually really proud of this at the time. It was one of those fun activities, or the process was fun and the product was fun. So
I'm proud of you.
Thanks. I'm always proud of you. So that's really what you need is a page of text and a pencil. But if you want to, go bananas, get some markers, get some pencil crayons, and do it however you like. Before we get started, there's one other thing I'll show you as an example. There's a fabulous Instagram account, and there are several that produce and collect this kind of work. But this one called Make Blackout Poetry. Hopefully you can see some of that. People do some very simple black and white work, but then also some incredibly sophisticated artwork where they integrate the design, artistic designs with the text that they're selecting, and they do creative things with the text they're selecting. They do creative things with the text they're eliminating, and sometimes the design, the new poem, and the original text all work really beautifully together. And often the poem that you're finding and the words that you're blacking out, you're working within the sort of themes that are on the page. So one thing that's kind of fun to do before you get started is actually read the page and see, to what degree do you want to directly manipulate the page that you're working with, or the content that the original content that you're working with, and to what degree do you want to just say, well, it doesn't matter what I'm using, I'm just going to use whatever words are here and do something that has nothing to do with the original text. So sometimes, for example, people can use Blackout poetry or found poetry to sort of, comment on or play with the original text, whatever that might be, and do something playful with that. So here's how you'd want to get started. You have your text, you have whatever item you're using. Let's just start with a pencil. That's the best way. So here you go. And the best way to start is just to sort of scan the page slowly, look at any words that really jump out at you or that you think lend themselves to, this kind of an activity, and look at some different combinations. Just explore the page. And another thing, that's one thing you could do. Another way you could start is just by, going line by line and building it as you go. So how you plan out which words you're going to keep and which words you're going to eliminate is up to you. But that's the method. So we're just picking some words to use. It's very tricky. And you want to go through multiple iterations sometimes, so you might need a pencil and eraser as your first set of tools.
You have to think it through before you pick it. Like, if you pick lots of words that you like but they don't go together, you have to first read the whole thing and see what makes sense.
And try some different combinations.
Mine doesn't make that much sense.
Well, mine made no sense as I was starting, but I was looking for a certain theme, and then, because you can't change the words, typically you don't add letters. Sometimes you can subtract because you're eliminating, right? This is process of elimination, so it makes sense to
I used half a word.
Exactly. I did that once too. And one thing that I do when I do this, many people do this differently, but one thing that I do is I tend to go in order. I don't rearrange any orders of words, but when you rearrange the order of the words you're choosing, you have to find some visual way to make it make sense, because if someone picks it up, they have to be able to read it as a poem. So you can't just say, oh, well, this word's supposed to be before this word. No, you have to find some way to visually represent it. Like, some people leave a little space or a little trail, from word to word, and then they create a path. So if you want to do the words out of order, that's another way that people do it. Like, you pick a word here, and then maybe you wish that the two words were reversed on the page, but if you do it like a trail and you sort of guide the reader through what you've done, and then you can decorate around, it's quite cool. I tend to, maybe this says something about the way my mind works or something, I don't know, but I tend to do this by never rearranging the order of the words. I find it more challenging and kind of more fun, and also more frustrating, but that's part of the process of writing poetry. Writing anything, that's true.
I'm usually full of ideas, but I don't know how to put it on paper.
It's exactly the challenge, because when you're writing, especially when you're writing poetry, your challenge is to give something that doesn't really have a way of expressing itself, or doesn't really have a voice, to give that feeling or give that thought a voice in a way that makes sense, but also obeys some of the other loose ideas when it comes to writing, and especially writing poetry, like using metaphor. So what you said was so exactly right. Finding a way to put it on paper is the trick. It's even, but that's one of the challenges with blackout poetry or found poetry. You don't get to choose the words. You can't say, oh, this would be the perfect word, or this is what I'm trying to say. You're limited by what's on the page. in some ways, but then, like I said, if you want to like rearrange words, you have to find some visual way of making that make sense, and so that the reader can follow it. Does that make sense? I just happened to do this one in order, like, because I find that to be more challenging, and I enjoy that extra challenge of not changing anything around. But that's just my process. So if you're going to rearrange the order of words, the only thing, I mean, it's poetry, who cares? But the, you know, when you speak of sort of rules, but the only thing that oh goodness, I lost my train of thought. But the only sort of rule bending I do is what we said earlier, which is, sometimes I'll take a word, like and I really, really want the word an, like an, on the page, but it's not there, but I see an and, but it would make so much sense, or it'd be so helpful if...
Cross out the D.
Exactly. So some people, when they want to do things like rearrange the order of the words, or they'll create a sort of trail or a path. What I'm doing here is just making sure every word I want, like I didn't rearrange the order of the words, but I'm making every word I want is, now that I've settled on what I'm going to use and what I'm not going to use, I'm making sure every word I want is clearly outlined, so any blacking out or any artistic design that I do won't cross over into the boundary of that word, so that the word will be very clearly legible. Okay, so I'm going to show you the next step for me, how I did this one, because what I like to do is go in order, but again, lots of people can sort of rearrange the order as long as it's visually clear, sort of what leads to what, or in what order the words are meant to be read. So what I've done is finally selected the words I'm going to use and not use, and just sort of make sure it's very, very clear, so as I start to decorate it, I'll be able to protect those and not mess them up. Right, so as you go, what you want to do, once you've decided which words you're going to use, is outline them pretty well once you're sure, and then it makes it easier to decorate around them. But of course, if the design that you want to use, and you don't have to be a visual artist to do this, I'll show you what I mean in a minute, you may not want to outline it as strongly, because you might want a lighter border around the word, or whatever, who knows how you want to design it. But I'm just finishing another one off, this is the one I tried with the Catcher in the Rye page, but then I found the words on the 1984 page like much more appealing, so I just started another one. I'm going to finish it and then I'll read it to you, but like I consider myself to be a very weak visual artist, especially when it comes to product, but when you do activities like this, it should be meditative and about the process, and you learn about yourself and observe your mind as you do the work. It's a great way to learn about yourself, like about your abilities and how you talk to yourself, and where your mind goes while you do it, and how you feel as you go through something like that, and can you make adjustments or whatever. The process of it is half of I don't know how to quantify it, but the process of it is often as important as the product. So just keep going as you go, and if you want to do clear borders or design it however you like, you can, or decorate the heck out of the page. If I could, I would, but this is a good way to do it and do an effective job of it, and I'll show you the finished product in a minute. So in the end, what you get is this sort of a product. I'm going to read you the poems and sort of show you what I did, but since I was just talking about the aesthetics of it, and again, like I'm under no illusions. I'm not a visual artist, but I did put some thought into like the process and what I was doing, and you'll see it'll make sense in a second. But I can also show you how my 9-year-old daughter just can do it on the fly too, and it's her second time trying one of these. So my poem from 1984, that's how it looks. It says, all right, here we go. We are obedience, submission, surrender. Resist, burn illusion out. Heart and soul in secret proclaim rebellion. Blow it out. Stand out. Exaltation in thought, in grace, in range, will spare you, fill you. That's all. And so what you see, like I decided that, the segments on this side of the page sort of had a, different feels to it. So, I put like, we are obedience, submission, surrender, and I just sort of started going in black, and my marker started to run out. So I was like, maybe I should like switch up the color. And that's what I mean by process. You can't always know or predict. And then I switched to red for the part that's about like resisting, burning, and then the heart and soul, and proclaiming rebellion and that kind of thing. And then in the section where the only words are stand out, I just put in yellow, and whatever. And then this section here that has it's about like exalting in thought and in grace, being graceful and having a big range, and that sparing you has like a blue sky, a cooling sort of color. And then at the bottom I didn't know what to do, and I just thought, well, why not change it up a bit, and the only words in that section are fill you, and I just thought, given the tone of the poem that ended up getting created, which is, the words that I chose, it forms its own new poem, and, the message of the poem that I left there is, not all poems need a message, but I think there is one here, and that's what I was going for as I was selecting my words. As soon as I started to see like obedience, submission, surrender, words like that, the idea of the first part of the poem is, and of course, because the words are taken from the pages of 1984, and I took it from the section in which Winston is being tortured in room 101 in the Ministry of Love, and he's lying on the rack as O'Brien tries to crack his bones by pulling him apart. This is like, that's the mood that I wanted to come up with, and commentary on like what people tend to do, and obey and submit and surrender to whatever. You can take it however you like it. That's one of the great things about poetry. It's not heavy-handed, overly explicit. It has to have some wiggle room within it so that the reader can enjoy making whatever connections to the poem they like. You have to keep it a little bit vague so that more people can relate to it, but that it still sends a message and tells a story. So this one's sort of like commenting on, some aspect of like human nature and humans in society, and then, the red part is like, about challenging that and resisting and burning out illusions, and then with the activities of the heart and soul, when they're secret, they can proclaim rebellion, and the next line is like blow it out, express it like a trumpet or something. See, like blow it out, that's my association, but someone else might think of something completely different. And when you talk about a poem, you say, well, I heard this, and then the answer to that is, oh, isn't that interesting, So, and then it goes on from there. Okay, so that's the idea. And the Catcher in the Rye one, I don't need to like spend too much time with it. This one was I didn't decorate it. This is one I probably would have just like blacked out. But if you were an artist, you could have done like Holden Caulfield's like hunting hat or whatever you like. This says, name an innocent play and a dirty poem and a nobody. Catch everybody. Catch them. I know, it's crazy. Kill the teacher now. This phone wouldn't just walk around. I don't know where I was going with it. I mean, I could pick it apart, but I don't think it's worth it. The other one is much more useful. And just to be clear, my daughter was sitting beside me, and I was just like showing her how it worked, and she was listening to the instructions, and she tried it once before, but not in such detail. She did this great one out of 1984 as well. Oh my God, this is so good. I just saw. Now we are different. We are finally free. We are perfect. What does that say?
We are not perfect.
We are not perfect. Love, friendship, joy, laughter, curiosity, courage, integrity. Oh, we have love, friendship, joy, laughter. Okay, sorry, I messed up your poem. Now we are different. We are finally free. We are not perfect. We have love. And I think there's like a but implied in there. If there if there was a but there, that would have been cool. But we have love, friendship, joy. We are not perfect, but we have love, friendship, joy, laughter, curiosity, courage, integrity. If there was a but there, I would have picked it. But that's brilliant, Becca. Oh, there is a but. Anyway, it's your poem. And you pick your words, and you eliminate the others, and you can either black it out or do something artistic with it. And your task for this week, you'll have 1 week, your task is to do 3 blackout poems or 3 found poems. And there's a subtle distinction, but let's not worry about it. Let's focus on finding the poetry within a larger block of text, or if you like the sort of blackout poetry label or image, then think of it as finding poetry within a large block of text and blacking out the rest. All right, so 3 of those in 1 week, and I'll leave any other important instructions on in writing on the Google Classroom.